My boyfriend ordered me to pass on a lucrative $120,000 promotion because it would make him feel inferior. He then insisted I turn down that role and take a receptionist job instead. So, I downgraded him to X status. Have you ever poured your entire soul into a relationship only to find the person you thought you knew was a total stranger? Well, I did. I thought he loved me, that we were a team, but the moment I landed my dream promotion, his true colors emerged, and I realized I was living with someone who would stop at nothing to tear me down. What would you do if your partner asked you to give up everything you'd worked for, just to protect their ego? Ryan and I? We'd been together for 2 years, and I genuinely believed we had something special. I was a research coordinator at a pharmaceutical company, pulling in a decent $70,000 a year. He worked for his dad, a sales manager at a plumbing supply company, making about $50,000. He always swore that money didn't matter, that our love was bigger than our bank accounts. He said we were a team, and I, foolishly, believed him with all my heart. Then, everything changed. Just last month, my boss called me into her office. My stomach did that nervous flip-flop thing, you know? But it wasn't bad news. Oh, no. It was monumental. She offered me the director of clinical trials position. $120,000 a year. A company car. 4 weeks paid vacation. Stock options. This wasn't just a job, this was everything I'd bled for. For 5 grueling years, I'd worked 60-hour weeks. I stayed late devouring protocols, spent my weekends in certification courses, even flew to conferences on my own dime just to network and get my name out there. This was my moment. I earned this. That night, I practically floated home, bursting to tell Ryan. I imagined him cheering, grabbing champagne, pulling me into a proud hug. But when I told him, his face, it just changed. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't pride. It was something else. Something cold and unfamiliar. He just stared at me and said, "Maybe we should think about this carefully." My joy evaporated. What is there to think about? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He started listing things. This promotion, he said, would come with a lot of stress, even longer hours. He reminded me I was already tired from my current job. Maybe, he suggested, I should focus on our relationship instead of my career. At first, I thought he was worried about me, worried I'd burn out. I even felt a flicker of warmth, thinking he cared for my well-being. But then, he started to unravel the real problems. And that's when the ground beneath me just fell away. My mom won't understand why you make more than me, he started. My brother will make jokes at Sunday dinners. My friends will think I'm less of a man. Less of a man. He actually said those words out loud. He looked at me, completely serious, and said I needed to consider how my success would affect his reputation. A sudden, sharp anger, hot and unexpected, surged through me. My success is not your responsibility to manage, Ryan. I shot back, my voice trembling but firm. And your reputation certainly isn't mine. That's when he stopped trying to be subtle. He got mean. He called me selfish. He said relationships required sacrifice, and that his ex-girlfriend, the one he always called boring, the one with no ambition who worked part-time at a flower shop, she understood the importance of letting the man be the provider. Suddenly, she was the ideal partner. It was a gut punch. For a solid week after that, he sulked. He wouldn't celebrate with me. He didn't tell anyone about my promotion. When my parents called, ecstatic to congratulate me, he dramatically left the room. When my sister sent a bottle of champagne, he sneered, calling it excessive. He started forwarding me articles, horrible, manipulative clickbait about women who regretted prioritizing careers over family, stories of successful women who ended up alone, statistics about divorce rates when wives earn more than their husbands. He even bookmarked a blog post titled, "How to be a supportive partner without losing yourself," and left it open on my laptop. The post, of course, was all about women stepping back, shrinking themselves to let their men shine. It was psychological warfare. Then, the final blow. The ultimatum. 3 days before I had to give my answer to my boss, Ryan sat me down. His eyes were cold. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking and had come to a devastating conclusion. This promotion would absolutely destroy us. If I took it, he'd always feel inferior. His family would judge him. His coworkers would laugh behind his back. He needed me, he said, to decline it. For us. For our future. And get this, he'd even called his dad's friend who owned a dental office. He'd gotten me an interview for a receptionist position. $35,000 a year, but regular hours, no stress. Perfect for when we have kids, he chirped. Kids we had never once discussed. I stared at him, disbelief flooding me. Absolutely not, I said, the words heavy and final. His face contorted. You're choosing money over love, he accused, his voice rising. You're materialistic, power-hungry. No man will ever want a woman who needs to be the boss. My mother, he added, as if that was the ultimate authority, warned me you were too ambitious. His mother? The woman who hadn't worked a day in her life, who spent her husband's money on designer bags? She was now the arbiter of ambition. That night, while he was at his buddy's house, I packed. I took everything that was mine. And let me tell you, that turned out to be most of the apartment. I'd paid for the furniture, the TV, all the kitchen appliances. I left him with his gaming chair and the sad, lumpy mattress he'd brought from his mom's house. I was done. He came home to an empty apartment and immediately called me, screaming into the phone. He called me vindictive, crazy. He swore I'd regret this when I was 40 and alone, that no one would ever want a woman who put her career first. I just hung up. And then I blocked his number. But he wasn't done. Oh, no, not even close. The next morning, my phone started ringing from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them, but they kept coming. Another call, a different number, then another. By the end of the day, I had 7 missed calls from 7 different numbers. Then the voicemails started. The first one was Ryan crying, saying he was so sorry. He just needed to talk. The second, he called me selfish, accused me of throwing away 2 years for money. The third was another apology, begging me to call back. The fourth told me I was childish and immature. They kept alternating, back and forth, from pleading to furious. My friend Camila called me that night to check in, and I told her about the voicemails, the sheer emotional whiplash of it all. She immediately told me to save every single one, not to delete anything. You might need proof later, she said, if things get worse. I didn't want to think about things getting worse, but I saved them anyway. Every time I heard his voice, my stomach would clench, twisting into a knot of anxiety. 3 days after I moved out, I was unpacking boxes in my new apartment. The building phone rang. It was the security guard downstairs. Someone named Ryan is here to see you, he said. My heart leaped into my throat, hammering against my ribs. How did he even know my address? I'd been so careful not to tell him. The guard didn't know, but asked if he should send him up. Absolutely not. I blurted, my voice sharper than I intended. Ryan is not allowed on this property, ever. The guard said he'd make a note and escort him out. I stood there shaking for at least 10 minutes after I hung up, my adrenaline coursing. That same afternoon, my mom called, her voice tight with upset. Ryan's mother had just called her, crying about how I'd broken her son's heart. She told my mom I'd ruined his life by being too ambitious and caring more about my career than our relationship. She claimed Ryan was so sad he could barely get out of bed. My mom, bless her, told Ryan's mom exactly what was what. That Ryan broke his own relationship by harassing me, and that I had every right to protect myself. But my mom also warned me. This might get worse before it gets better. Ryan's family is clearly in denial about his behavior, and they might keep trying to make you the bad guy. I felt exhausted just thinking about having to deal with his entire family on top of everything else. Monday morning arrived. My first day as director of clinical trials. I felt this incredible mix of excitement and sheer exhaustion from all the Ryan drama that had consumed my weekend. My new office was on the 4th floor with these huge windows looking out over the city. I spent my lunch break just sitting in my chair staring at the view, letting it all sink in. This was what I'd worked for. Those 60-hour weeks. The 5 years. The weekend classes. The conferences I paid for myself. I earned this office. I earned this job. And I felt a profound sense of pride sitting there. Around 2 o'clock, another director stopped by. He knocked on my open door, introduced himself as Duncan Steele, said he'd started about 3 months ago. He was friendly, normal. He offered advice about company politics, who to watch out for. What was amazing was that he wasn't weird about me being a woman in leadership, which felt incredibly refreshing after dealing with Ryan's suffocating insecurity for so long. We talked for about 20 minutes, then he headed back to his own office. The very next morning, I checked my work email and there it was, a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made my blood run cold, thief and liar. The email claimed I stole money from Ryan and destroyed his property when I moved out. It called me a thief and a liar, saying people should know what kind of person I really was. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my coffee. I immediately forwarded it to Laura Kerr in HR, explaining the whole situation. Ryan, my ex, who tried to make me turn down my promotion, the calls, him showing up at my apartment. I wanted HR to know everything in case he tried to contact the company again. Laura called me within an hour and asked me to come to her office. She took the situation incredibly seriously, starting to write down every single detail I shared. She said the company had dealt with situations before where someone's personal life affected their work safety. She asked detailed questions about our breakup, what he'd been doing since. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and asked, "Do you feel safe?" I realized with a jolt that I wasn't sure anymore. I told her I didn't think Ryan would hurt me physically, but I had no idea what else he might do. She made notes, then assured me she'd flag my name with building security so they'd know to watch for him. That weekend, Ryan posted on social media. It was about gold diggers who leave their partners the second they get a little success. He didn't use my name, but he tagged a bunch of our mutual friends in the post. I didn't respond, didn't react, but several friends started texting me asking what happened. Some seemed genuinely concerned. Others, I could tell, just wanted gossip. I didn't reply to most of them. I was just too tired to explain the whole exhausting story over and over again. Sunday afternoon, I met up with Camila. I told her everything, the calls, Ryan showing up, his mom's call to my mom, and now this insane fake email to my work. Camila was furious on my behalf. She said Ryan was escalating, that I needed to document everything meticulously. She insisted I should think about getting a lawyer, filing some kind of legal complaint before this got even worse. The idea of lawyers, of legal action, just overwhelmed me. All I wanted was for him to leave me alone so I could focus on my amazing new job. Monday morning, my first staff meeting with my new team. 12 research coordinators now reported directly to me. I stood at the front of the conference room going over our current trials, the upcoming deadlines. It felt weird, kind of unreal, to be the one leading the meeting instead of sitting in the audience. About halfway through, I caught myself. Was Ryan right? Could I really not handle the pressure? That toxic voice in my head. I shut it down hard. And I kept talking, confidently, about protocol timelines. These people were counting on me to lead them. I wasn't going to let Ryan's insecurity make me doubt myself. After the meeting, 3 of the coordinators stayed behind, asking questions about their specific projects. I answered each one, and with every response, I felt my confidence surge. I knew this work inside and out. I had earned this promotion through actual skill and hard work, not luck or connections. Ryan's pathetic opinion about what I could or couldn't handle? It didn't matter anymore. He wasn't my problem to manage or my ego to protect. I had a whole team depending on me now. Real responsibilities that mattered way more than his hurt feelings about making less money than me. Tuesday afternoon, a Facebook message popped up. It was from Ryan's brother, Mark. He said I'd embarrassed their whole family, that Ryan was crushed because of me. He wrote that I acted like I was better than everyone, and that Ryan deserved someone who appreciated him. I took a screenshot of the entire message and saved it to the folder on my computer where I was keeping all my Ryan-related documentation. Then I blocked Mark on every platform I could think of. There was nothing to say to someone who thought Ryan's behavior was my fault. 2 weeks into my new role and I was managing 3 major clinical trials simultaneously. Trial A was testing a new diabetes medication, 200 patients across 15 sites. Trial B, autoimmune disorders, 90 patients at 8 locations. And Trial C, our biggest project, a cardiovascular study with 350 patients at 20 sites nationwide. I created tracking systems for each trial, color-coded spreadsheets showing enrollment, adverse events, protocol deviations, site performance metrics. During my weekly check-in with my boss, she pulled up my organizational dashboard on her computer and just stared at it for 5 minutes. She told me the system was exactly what the department needed and asked if I could train the other coordinators to use similar methods. I felt this rush of pure, unadulterated pride. It had nothing to do with Ryan. Nothing to do with proving him wrong. This was just me being good at my job because I worked hard and knew what I was doing. My confidence, piece by piece, started coming back in small moments like that, when I remembered I earned this position through actual skill. Friday night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. An unknown number. I was half asleep and answered without even thinking. Ryan's voice came through, rambling about how I never appreciated everything he did for me. He claimed he'd supported my career, helped me get where I was today. He even insisted he'd always encouraged me to work hard and go after promotions. The total rewrite of history was shocking, but the timing worried me more. Why 2 a.m.? Was he drunk, or just unable to sleep because he was still obsessed? I hung up and blocked that number too, but I couldn't fall back asleep. The next week, I went to the phone store and changed my number completely. I only gave the new number to my parents, my sister, and Camila. For 3 glorious days, my phone stayed quiet. It felt like absolute relief. No unknown numbers, no voicemails from Ryan, no messages from his delusional family members. I started to think maybe he was finally done. Then Thursday morning, Laura from HR called my desk phone, asked me to come to her office. Her voice was serious, professional, in a way that made my stomach hurt all over again. When I got there, she closed the door behind me. And then she told me someone had contacted the company's general information line. They claimed I was involved in research fraud and patient endangerment. They said I falsified data in clinical trials and put people's lives at risk. The accusations were completely, utterly made up. But Laura explained that HR had to investigate any ethics complaints about employees. She needed me to know this was happening and that it was being taken seriously. My face went hot. My hands started shaking again. "This is Ryan," I said, my voice tight. "My ex-boyfriend who tried to make me turn down my promotion." She nodded, remembering our previous conversation. An hour later, I was in the HR conference room across from Laura, answering questions from a form. "Do you have access to trial data?" "Yes." "Did you ever modify data without proper authorization?" "No." "Had you ever compromised patient safety?" "Absolutely not." She clearly didn't believe the accusations, but she had to write down my answers, document everything. I could see in her eyes that she was just doing her job, following procedure. I explained about Ryan's escalating harassment campaign. I pulled up my phone and showed her screenshots of messages from him and his brother. I opened my documentation folder and printed copies of everything with dates and times. Laura took notes on all of it, adding the papers to a file with my name on it. My boss was called into a meeting with HR that afternoon. Laura needed her to verify my work quality and confirm I followed all ethical standards. My boss came to my office afterward. She told me she gave a strong statement about my professional conduct, that my work was always thorough and by the book, but I could see the concern in her eyes. All this drama following me into my new position. She asked if I was okay, if there was anything the company could do. I said I was handling it, but I appreciated her support. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling until almost 3 a.m. I kept thinking about how Ryan's twisted lies could actually cost me the job I'd spent 5 years working toward. Everything I'd built, everything I'd earned, could just fall apart. All because my ex-boyfriend was mad that I made more money than him. Around 11 o'clock the next day, Camila showed up at my apartment. 2 bottles of wine, takeout food. She made me eat something, then poured us both huge glasses of wine. She reminded me that the truth would come out, that my work record spoke for itself. She said I had documentation of everything and HR would see through Ryan's fake complaint. The HR investigation took 4 days. 4 agonizing days where I felt like everyone at work knew what was happening and was silently judging me. I imagined people whispering in the break room, wondering if the accusations were true. Every time someone looked at me, I thought they were thinking about the investigation. Duncan, the other director, noticed I seemed stressed during a department meeting and caught me afterward in the hallway. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes, desperately needing to talk to someone who understood workplace politics. We went to the coffee shop on the first floor, and I ended up telling him everything, about Ryan opposing my promotion, the breakup, the harassment, and now this utterly insane fake ethics complaint. Duncan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he told me his own story. His ex-wife tried to sabotage his career during their divorce. She contacted his former employer, claiming he stole proprietary information. None of it was true, but he had to go through a 3-week investigation. He survived it. He rebuilt his reputation. He warned me that people like Ryan count on their targets being too embarrassed to fight back. They think if they make enough noise and cause enough trouble, you'll just give up and go away. The best thing I could do, he advised, was document everything, cooperate fully with HR, and keep doing excellent work. The next morning, Laura called me into her office. She had a closed folder in her hands. She sat across from me and opened it. She showed me the investigation summary she'd typed up. The complaint, she said, was officially determined to be malicious and unfounded with no basis. In fact, she noted the timing correlation with my recent breakup and Ryan's documented harassment pattern. She closed the folder and looked at me directly. She suggested I might want to consult an attorney about Ryan's behavior because this pattern of workplace interference, combined with his other contacts, was concerning. I thanked her, feeling a wave of relief, but also a fresh prickle of worry. The investigation was over, but Ryan clearly wasn't stopping. I called Camila during my lunch break and told her what Laura said about getting an attorney. She immediately started searching on her phone for harassment lawyers in our area. She found Courtney Mahoney, who specialized in stalking and harassment cases with strong reviews from other women who dealt with vindictive ex-partners. The consultation fee was $200 and the retainer was $3,000 if I decided to hire her. My stomach dropped at the cost, but Camila cut me off before I could say anything. "I'll lend you the money if you need it," she said, her voice firm. "Your safety is way more than $3,000. I made the appointment for Thursday afternoon and tried to focus on work for the rest of the day. Thursday came and I drove to Courtney's office in a downtown building near the courthouse. Her office was small but professional. Law books lining the walls, case files stacked on her desk. She was probably in her late 40s with short, gray hair and a no-nonsense way of talking that instantly made me feel like she'd seen this exact situation 100 times before. I handed her the folder I'd been keeping, my meticulous documentation, screenshots of messages, the fake email, the timeline of events, notes from conversations. She spent 20 minutes reading through everything while I sat there, picking at my fingernail, heart pounding. When she finally looked up, she told me simply, "You have solid grounds for a restraining order." She cited the pattern of contact, the workplace interference, the escalating behavior. She explained the process, how long it would take. Then she gave me a stark warning. Filing might make Ryan angrier before it made things better. Some people, she said, see a restraining order as a challenge, or proof that they're losing control. I asked if that meant I shouldn't do it. No, she said, her gaze steady. It means you should be prepared and document any violations immediately. I spent that weekend trapped in my apartment, agonizing over whether to move forward. Part of me just wanted to ignore Ryan, hoping he'd get bored and stop. But another part, the logical, exhausted part, knew that hoping wasn't a strategy. He'd already proven he wouldn't stop on his own. Saturday night, my sister called. I told her about meeting with Courtney, my hesitation about making this even more public and official. My sister got quiet for a second. Then she said something that really hit home. Staying silent never makes bullies stop. They just keep pushing until someone pushes back. Ryan's already making it public by contacting your workplace and posting on social media. You're just making it official in a way that will actually protect you. After we hung up, I knew she was right. I texted Courtney. I want to move forward with the restraining order. Monday morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. Someone had tagged me in a LinkedIn post. My whole body went cold as I opened the app. Ryan. He created a fake profile using the name Daniel Webb, claiming to be a former colleague from a research position I'd held 4 years ago. The profile looked real, a professional photo he must have pulled from somewhere, a detailed work history. And Daniel Webb had posted a scathing review of me, saying I was unethical and difficult to work with, that I cut corners on research protocols, and created hostile work environments. The post included specific details about projects I'd worked on, details only Ryan would know because I'd told him about them in confidence. He twisted everything. A disagreement I'd had with a former supervisor, a trial that got delayed due to enrollment issues. He'd spun it all to make me sound incompetent and dangerous. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I screenshot everything, the fake profile, the post, every damning detail he'd included. I reported the profile to LinkedIn immediately with a detailed explanation and all my screenshots. Then I forwarded everything to Courtney with a frantic message explaining what I'd found. She responded within an hour. "This strengthens our case significantly," she wrote. "It shows deliberate professional sabotage and proves Ryan is actively trying to damage your career and reputation." She asked me to document any responses or shares the post got before LinkedIn took it down. I spent my lunch break doing exactly that, feeling sick to my stomach the whole time. By the end of the day, LinkedIn had removed the profile and the post, but I had everything saved in multiple places. Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. The message read, "I just want closure, one conversation. You're being unfair by shutting me out completely. I deserve a chance to explain my side." I knew immediately it was Ryan, even though he didn't sign it. I didn't respond. Instead, I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Courtney with a note about him somehow getting my new number. She replied quickly, telling me that not engaging was exactly right. Any response, she said, would just encourage him and show that this method of contact worked. She added the text to our evidence file. That weekend, my parents drove up to visit me. They'd been so worried since I told them about everything happening with Ryan. We went to dinner at a cozy Italian place near my apartment, and my dad finally said what he'd apparently been thinking for months. "I never liked Ryan," he confessed. "I always thought he was intimidated by you." My mom nodded, admitting she'd worried I was making myself smaller to make Ryan comfortable. She said she noticed I stopped talking about work accomplishments around him and changed the subject when anyone asked about my job. I felt a pang of embarrassment that they'd seen it even when I hadn't fully recognized it myself. My dad reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," he told me, his eyes warm, "for choosing yourself and your career. Any man worth having," he added, "would celebrate your success instead of resenting it." Monday at work, I was managing a major trial enrollment deadline, coordinating between 3 different research sites. We needed to hit our enrollment target by Friday or risk losing funding for the next phase. I spent the week in back-to-back meetings, reviewing protocols, troubleshooting site issues, keeping my team motivated. The pressure was intense, but it felt good, purposeful, like I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Nothing like Ryan's pathetic claim that I couldn't handle the stress or that the job would be too much for me. By Thursday afternoon, we'd not just met, but exceeded our enrollment goal. My boss sent an email to the executive team highlighting our success. I sat at my desk feeling genuinely, deeply proud. And I thought about how different my life would be right now if I'd listened to Ryan, if I'd taken that soul-crushing receptionist job. Friday morning, Courtney called. "I'm filing the restraining order petition this afternoon," she said. She compiled 2 months of documented harassment into a robust legal petition with exhibits showing the pattern of behavior. The timeline of contact attempts, the workplace interference, the fake social media profiles, the text from the unknown number, everything meticulously organized, presented as evidence of ongoing harassment. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Ryan would be served with papers notifying him of the petition and the hearing date. Courtney warned me again that getting served might trigger an escalation. "Be extra careful about your surroundings," she advised. "And call the police immediately if he shows up anywhere near you." I thanked her, hanging up, feeling both relieved that something was finally happening and incredibly nervous about what Ryan would do when he found out. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with Laura from HR before my team arrived. She sat across from me with her notepad. "Ready." I explained that Courtney had filed the restraining order petition and Ryan would be served within the next few days. Laura nodded, making notes in my file, connecting it to the previous complaint about the fake LinkedIn profile and the fraudulent ethics accusation. She thanked me for keeping HR informed and said the documentation created a clear pattern that protected both me and the company. She asked if I wanted security to have Ryan's photo, and I immediately said yes. The conversation took maybe 10 minutes, but I felt so much better knowing the company understood this was serious. 2 days later, Courtney called me during my lunch break. The process server had delivered the restraining order papers to Ryan at his father's plumbing supply business that morning. "He immediately called my office," she said, and left 3 voicemails, each one angrier than the last. In the messages, he was screaming that I was ruining his life, making him look like a criminal in front of his father and the employees. He claimed I was vindictive and that he'd only been trying to have a conversation. Courtney said his reaction was typical of people who genuinely believed they were entitled to access someone regardless of that person's wishes. She added his voicemails to our evidence file because they demonstrated exactly why I needed the protection order. That evening, my dad called me sounding frustrated. Stuart Boyd, Ryan's father, had somehow gotten my dad's cell number and called him at work. Stuart asked my dad to convince me to drop the legal action because it was hurting Ryan's reputation and making things difficult at the family business. My dad told me he'd responded that Ryan hurt his own reputation by harassing me and that I had every right to protect myself. Stuart tried to argue that boys will be boys and Ryan just loved me too much to let go. My dad shut that down immediately. He told Stuart that if he called again, he'd add that to the evidence file, showing the whole family enabled Ryan's behavior. I felt so incredibly grateful that my parents understood and supported my decisions without question. The next 2 weeks passed without any contact from Ryan, which surprisingly made me more anxious than the constant harassment had. I kept checking my phone, expecting angry messages or seeing his car in the parking lot. Courtney explained this was completely normal when I called her, worried. She said respondents often went quiet before court hearings, either because their lawyer told them to or because they were planning their defense strategy. The silence felt ominous rather than peaceful. I found myself looking over my shoulder in the grocery store and checking the locks on my apartment door multiple times before bed. On a Wednesday morning, I opened my personal email and found a message from Ryan's mother, sent to an address I didn't even know she had. The email was long, probably 8 paragraphs, begging me to remember the good times Ryan and I shared. She wrote about family dinners where I'd laughed at their jokes and holidays when I'd helped her in the kitchen. She said I was breaking up their family and that Ryan had been depressed since I left. She claimed he barely ate anymore and spent all his time in his childhood bedroom. The email painted me as cruel and heartless for pursuing legal action when Ryan just needed closure and a chance to apologize properly. She ended by saying she'd always thought of me as a daughter and couldn't understand how I'd become so cold. I felt sick reading it, but didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the entire email to Courtney with a note explaining I'd never given his mother this email address. Courtney replied within an hour saying she was adding it to our evidence file. She wrote that his family enabling his behavior and contacting me on his behalf was part of why Ryan thought his actions were acceptable. She said, people who grow up with parents who make excuses for them never learn that their choices have consequences. The email actually strengthened our case by showing the pattern extended beyond just Ryan. At work, things were going surprisingly well. Despite everything happening in my personal life, my team had been working on enrolling patients for a major trial with a tight deadline. We needed 200 participants by the end of the month, and I'd been coordinating between 3 different research sites to hit our numbers. By Thursday afternoon, we'd enrolled 212 participants, finishing 2 days ahead of schedule. My boss brought it up in our department meeting on Friday, praising my leadership and organizational skills in front of the other directors. I sat there feeling genuinely proud of what I was accomplishing. The work gave me something concrete to focus on when everything else felt chaotic and uncertain. Duncan and I had started grabbing lunch together about once a week. It began casually when we both ended up in the cafeteria at the same time, but it became a regular thing where we discussed trials and strategy. He treated me like a competent colleague, never asking invasive questions about Ryan or making the situation weird. We talked about enrollment challenges, protocol issues, department politics. Having a work friendship that was just about work felt so refreshing. Duncan never acted like I was fragile or needed special handling because of the restraining order situation. 3 days before the court hearing, Camila texted me a screenshot from Instagram. Ryan had created a new account using a variation of his old username. He posted a series of photos from our relationship with long, twisted captions about how I'd used him and thrown him away when I got my promotion. One photo showed us at his brother's wedding with a caption about how I'd pretended to love his family. Another was from a vacation we'd taken with text about how I'd let him pay for everything and then abandoned him. The posts were public and they already had comments from people I didn't even know. I felt exposed in a way the private harassment hadn't made me feel. This was out there for anyone to see, painting me as a villain to strangers. I spent an hour documenting everything, screenshots of each post, the account details, the timestamps, the comments. I saved it all to my evidence folder and emailed copies to Courtney. Then I made my Instagram account private and blocked the new profile, but the damage felt done. These photos and lies were out there in public where my coworkers and friends could see them. Monday morning, my boss called me into her office before our weekly check-in. She closed the door and then she asked me directly, her voice full of genuine concern, "Are you safe?" Several employees followed me on social media and had seen Ryan's Instagram posts over the weekend. She looked at them herself after someone mentioned it to her. She wanted to know if the company needed to increase security measures or if there was anything else they could do to help. I appreciated her directness. Instead of dancing around the situation, I explained about the restraining order hearing scheduled for Thursday and assured her that security already had Ryan's photo. She told me to let her know immediately if anything escalated, that my safety was more important than any work deadline. The conversation lasted maybe 15 minutes, but knowing my boss and the company were taking this seriously made me feel so much less alone in dealing with it. She asked if I wanted to talk through what would happen at the hearing so I'd feel prepared. I explained that Courtney had walked me through the process, but hearing it from someone who'd been through something similar actually helped more than the legal explanation. My boss told me about an ex-boyfriend who showed up at her old workplace 15 years ago, how scared she felt walking to her car every day, how the company back then did nothing to help. She said she made sure when she became a director that her employees would never feel that unsafe. The conversation lasted maybe 20 minutes, but I left her office feeling like someone actually understood how exhausting it was to do good work while constantly looking over your shoulder. That afternoon, facilities management called my extension about reassigning my parking spot. They moved me from the back lot to a space right next to the main entrance, one of the spots usually reserved for executives. Security got an updated photo of Ryan and instructions to call the police immediately if he showed up on company property. I sat in my new parking spot after work that day and felt this massive wave of anger wash over me. The fact that any of this was necessary. That my company had to treat my ex-boyfriend like a legitimate threat. That I couldn't just park in the regular lot like a normal person. I was so mad at Ryan all over again for making my life this complicated, for forcing everyone around me to accommodate his inability to handle rejection like an adult. Thursday morning arrived faster than I wanted. Camila picked me up at 8 a.m. I didn't trust myself to drive to the courthouse without my hands shaking the whole way. She brought coffee and breakfast sandwiches and didn't try to make small talk when I clearly wasn't in the mood. Courtney met us outside the courtroom at 9:30. She looked so professional and calm, which actually helped settle some of my nerves. She reminded me to stay quiet unless the judge asked me a direct question, to let her handle the legal arguments, and to keep my face neutral no matter what Ryan said. We walked into the courtroom, and Ryan was already there with his father. No lawyer, no legal representation, just the two of them sitting on the opposite side, looking like they thought this was all some big misunderstanding. Ryan wore a button-down shirt and khakis like he was going to a job interview. His dad kept whispering to him, patting his shoulder. The judge called the case and asked both sides to present their positions. Courtney went first, laying out the timeline of harassment with specific dates and examples. She submitted printouts of the voicemails, text messages, emails, fake social media accounts, the complaint to my workplace. The evidence filled a 2-inch binder that she placed squarely on the judge's bench. Ryan's face got redder and redder while Courtney talked. When the judge asked if he wanted to respond, Ryan stood up and started talking, completely disorganized. He told the judge that I was just mad because he broke up with me, that I couldn't handle rejection, that I was making all of this up to get revenge. The judge looked at the timeline Courtney submitted, clearly showing I ended the relationship, then looked back at Ryan. She asked him to explain why he contacted my workplace if he'd broken up with me. Ryan stumbled over his words. He said he was just trying to warn them about my character, that he thought they should know what kind of person I really was. The judge asked why he created fake social media accounts. Ryan said he needed a way to tell his side of the story after I blocked him everywhere. His answers kept contradicting his ridiculous claim that he'd ended the relationship. The judge started asking more specific questions about the workplace complaint. Why did you accuse her of research fraud if you just wanted closure? Why did you contact her company's general information line instead of reaching out to her directly? Ryan got defensive, his voice getting louder. He said I was ruining his reputation, that his friends were asking questions, that his family was upset. The judge asked him to lower his voice. His father tried to jump in and the judge told him firmly that he wasn't a party to this case. Courtney then submitted the Instagram posts and Ryan's mother's email as additional evidence of the harassment pattern extending to his family. Ryan started arguing that his mom was just trying to help, that I was being unreasonable by involving the courts. The more he talked, the worse he made his case. His anger, right there in the courtroom, showed exactly why I needed protection from him. The judge took about 5 minutes to review all the evidence. Then she granted the restraining order for 1 year. She listed the terms out loud. Ryan couldn't contact me directly or indirectly. Couldn't come within 500 feet of my home or workplace. Couldn't post about me on social media or have anyone else contact me on his behalf. Violations, she stated clearly, would result in immediate arrest. Ryan's mouth actually fell open like he couldn't believe there were real consequences for his actions. His father started to say something and the judge shut him down immediately. Walking out of the courthouse felt surreal. My legs were shaky and I realized I'd been holding tension in my entire body for the past hour. Camila hugged me tight in the parking lot and I almost started crying from sheer relief. Courtney reminded me that the restraining order was only a piece of paper. Some people respect them, she said. Some people violate them out of spite. I needed to report any violations immediately, not give him chances or try to handle it myself. She warned that some people escalate after losing control in court because they're angry about the public humiliation. I promised to call the police at the first sign of any contact. The weekend after the hearing, I barely left my apartment. I felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with being physically tired. I was just emotionally drained from months of dealing with Ryan's harassment and the stress of legal proceedings. By Monday, I felt more like myself again. Work that week was noticeably calmer without the constant background anxiety about what Ryan might do next. I didn't jump every time my phone rang or check over my shoulder in the parking lot. I focused on preparing a major presentation for the executive team about outcomes from our key trials. The data looked strong and I spent hours making sure my slides were clear and compelling. Laura from HR called me down to her office on Wednesday. She showed me the official closure of the investigation file, noting that the court order validated everything I'd reported about the harassment campaign. She told me she was really impressed by how professionally I'd handled the situation, that a lot of people would have fallen apart under that kind of pressure. I thanked her for taking it seriously from the beginning, for believing me when Ryan tried to make me look like the problem. Friday afternoon, I presented to the executive team in the big conference room on the top floor. My boss introduced me and I walked them through the trial data, enrollment numbers, timeline projections, and budget analysis. I answered questions about protocol modifications and patient retention strategies with ease. The CEO himself spoke up at the end saying, "Your presentation showed exactly the kind of clear thinking and strategic planning the company needed. Your communication skills and ability to manage complex projects were impressive." I walked out of that conference room feeling genuinely, incredibly proud. This was what I'd worked for. What all those 60-hour weeks and weekend courses had been building toward. Recognition based purely on my ability to do the job well. Nothing to do with anyone's ego or insecurity about my success. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. Ryan. He'd used his father's phone to send me 3 paragraphs about how I destroyed his life and turned all his friends against him because of the court case. He said I was vindictive and cruel for getting a restraining order over nothing. He claimed he just wanted to explain his side and I was being unreasonable by refusing to talk to him like an adult. I took screenshots of every message before he could delete them. My hands shook a little while I pulled up Courtney's contact info and called her office. She answered on the second ring and I read her the messages word for word. She told me to forward the screenshots immediately and not respond to Ryan at all. She said this was exactly the kind of violation that judges took seriously because it showed he thought the rules didn't apply to him. I sent her the screenshots while we were still on the phone. She said she filed the violation report with the court first thing in the morning and I should expect Ryan to be called in for a contempt hearing. I asked if this meant he'd actually face consequences and she said yes. Judges don't like it, she added, when people ignore their orders right away. That night, I barely slept, worried Ryan would escalate further or find other ways to contact me. But my phone stayed quiet, and I kept checking the screenshots to make sure they were still saved. Courtney filed the violation report on Wednesday morning and called me that afternoon to say the court scheduled a hearing for the following week. She explained that Ryan would have to appear before the same judge who granted the restraining order and explain why he violated it. She warned me that he'd probably make excuses about not understanding the order or claim it was an emergency. The hearing happened on a Tuesday morning and I took a half day off work to be there. Ryan showed up looking angry and defensive, sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom, his father next to him again. The judge called the case and asked Ryan directly why he contacted me from his father's phone when the restraining order explicitly prohibited any direct or indirect contact. Ryan started saying he just needed closure and wanted to explain how the court case affected his friendships. The judge cut him off. "Did you read the restraining order, Mr. Boyd?" she asked, her voice sharp. "It clearly states that no contact means no contact for any reason." Ryan got flustered and stammered that he didn't think one text counted as harassment. The judge's expression got stern. "The order, Mr. Boyd, is not a suggestion. It is a legal mandate with consequences for violations." The judge issued a formal warning right there in the courtroom. She told Ryan that the next violation of any kind would result in immediate arrest and jail time. She said she was giving him one chance to understand that restraining orders exist to protect people from unwanted contact, regardless of the reason for that contact. Ryan's face went even redder and he started to argue, but his father grabbed his arm to stop him. The judge said the warning was now part of Ryan's court record and any future violation would be treated as willful contempt. She dismissed us and I walked out feeling like I could finally breathe properly. Courtney walked me to my car and said, "This is the moment when most people who harass others finally get that their actions have real legal consequences." She said some people needed to see a judge threaten jail time before they'd actually stop. I thanked her for handling everything so professionally, and she told me to call immediately if Ryan tried anything else. I drove back to work feeling cautiously hopeful that maybe this nightmare was actually ending. The stress from months of Ryan's harassment finally caught up with me. I realized I needed professional help to process everything. I found Vanessa through my insurance provider and scheduled my first therapy appointment for the following Thursday. Her office was in a quiet building downtown with comfortable chairs and soft lighting that made me feel less nervous about being there. I told her the whole story, from Ryan's ultimatum about my promotion through the restraining order and the violation hearing. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something that genuinely surprised me. Ryan's behavior, she said gently, was emotionally abusive long before the harassment campaign started. I'd been so focused on the stalking and workplace interference that I hadn't really thought about how he treated me during our relationship. Vanessa pointed out that demanding I turn down my promotion was controlling behavior designed to keep me dependent and small. She said the articles he sent me, the pressure about his family's opinions, those were manipulation tactics to make me doubt myself. Over the next several sessions, we worked through how I'd minimized my own achievements during the relationship, all to avoid triggering Ryan's insecurity. I told Vanessa about staying quiet when his family made comments about my job or how I'd downplay my successes when his friends asked about work. She asked me why I felt responsible for managing Ryan's emotions about my career. I said I thought I was being supportive and considerate of his feelings. Vanessa shook her head. "You are sacrificing your own joy and pride to protect his ego," she explained. "Healthy partners celebrate each other's success instead of requiring the other person to dim their light." I started crying in her office because I realized how much energy I'd spent trying to make Ryan comfortable with my achievements instead of just being proud of myself. She handed me tissues and told me that recognizing these patterns was the first step toward building healthier relationships in the future. 3 months after the restraining order hearing, I was genuinely thriving at work. I managed 5 major clinical trials simultaneously and my team respected my leadership without me having to prove myself constantly. I'd stopped second-guessing every decision and learned to trust my expertise and judgment. The trials were progressing smoothly with strong enrollment numbers and good patient retention rates. My boss complimented my organizational systems during our monthly check-in and said the executive team was impressed with my performance. I realized I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore or worrying about what Ryan might do next. The constant background anxiety that had been with me for months finally lifted, and I could focus completely on my work. My team started coming to me with ideas and suggestions instead of just problems, which showed they trusted my leadership style. I took my full lunch breaks without checking my phone every 5 minutes and actually enjoyed the downtown coffee shop near our building. Duncan stopped by my office one afternoon and mentioned he'd heard through industry contacts that Ryan's father's business lost a major contract with a regional hospital system. He said Ryan had apparently been complaining to people that it was somehow my fault for making his family look bad. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just relief that Ryan and his problems weren't mine anymore. Duncan asked if I was okay, and I told him honestly that I didn't care what happened to Ryan or his father's business. He nodded and said that was probably the healthiest response. We grabbed coffee and talked about the new trial protocols coming through our department instead. I appreciated that Duncan never made my past drama into gossip or treated me differently because of what happened. He just stayed professional and friendly without prying into my personal life beyond making sure I was safe. My sister drove up for a weekend visit in early fall and told me within an hour of arriving that I seemed like myself again. She said I looked lighter, more confident than I had in years. We went shopping and out to dinner at a nice Italian restaurant downtown that I could easily afford with my new salary. She ordered expensive wine, and I didn't even flinch at the price because I was making good money and could treat myself. Over dinner, she said she'd been worried about me during the relationship with Ryan because I seemed smaller, somehow less vibrant. I asked what she meant, and she explained that I used to talk about work with excitement and pride, but during those 2 years with Ryan, I'd started apologizing for my success or changing the subject quickly. She said she was glad I left him when I did because she could see where that relationship was heading. We laughed and clinked our wine glasses, and I felt so grateful to have family who supported my choices. 8 months into my director role, the company promoted me again to Senior Director of Clinical Trials. My boss called me into her office on a Friday afternoon and told me the executive team wanted to recognize my successful trial outcomes and team leadership with increased responsibility. The promotion came with another significant salary bump and oversight of additional trial programs across multiple therapeutic areas. I'd be managing an even larger team and working directly with the chief medical officer on strategic planning. I accepted immediately, without any hesitation or self-doubt. That night, I called my parents to tell them. My dad said he was proud of how I'd handled everything with Ryan and built my career despite the obstacles. My mom reminded me that the right opportunities come when you're ready for them, and I was clearly ready for this next step. I ran into one of Ryan's friends at a coffee shop the following week while I was grabbing my morning latte before work. He approached me carefully and asked if he could talk to me for a minute. I tensed up but agreed to hear what he had to say. He apologized for believing Ryan's version of events after our breakup. He said several people in their friend group had distanced themselves from Ryan after seeing his social media behavior and hearing about the restraining order. He told me that Ryan had been telling people I was crazy and vindictive, but then the court stuff became public knowledge and people started questioning his story. He said he felt bad for not reaching out sooner to check on me and wanted me to know that not everyone bought into Ryan's victim narrative. I thanked him for telling me and said I appreciated the apology. He wished me well and left. And I stood there holding my coffee, feeling this deep sense of validation that other people had finally seen through Ryan's manipulation. Vanessa, my therapist, started asking me in our weekly sessions why I always qualified my successes with explanations about luck or timing instead of just owning my achievements. I'd say things like, "Oh, I got promoted because the company needed someone." Or, "The timing just worked out." And she'd stop me. She'd point out that I earned it through years of hard work and skill. She had me practice saying out loud that I deserved my position and salary without adding any disclaimers or apologies. The exercise felt awkward at first, almost arrogant. But she explained that confident women often get labeled as threatening, while confident men get called leaders. We worked through specific examples from my relationship with Ryan where I'd minimized my accomplishments to make him comfortable, like not mentioning my conference presentations or downplaying positive feedback from my boss. Vanessa helped me see that the right partner would celebrate my success instead of requiring me to shrink myself to protect their ego. She asked me to notice when I started apologizing for taking up space or achieving things. And I realized I did it constantly at work and in social situations. Over several months of therapy, I practiced accepting compliments without deflecting them and talking about my career with pride instead of embarrassment. Camila called me one evening and said she had a coworker who was single and asked if I'd be interested in meeting him for coffee. I hesitated. Dating felt so complicated after everything with Ryan, but she promised it would be casual with no pressure. His name was Jason. He worked in Camila's marketing department. We met at a coffee shop downtown on a Saturday afternoon. He asked about my job within the first 10 minutes and actually listened when I explained clinical trial management. Instead of changing the subject or making jokes about me being the boss, Jason told me about a project he was leading at work and we compared notes about managing teams and dealing with difficult stakeholders. The conversation flowed easily without any weird competition or him trying to one-up my accomplishments. We went on 2 more casual dates over the next month, but the chemistry wasn't quite right for anything serious, and we both recognized it. Still, the experience showed me that some men genuinely wanted a partner with ambition instead of feeling threatened by it. A year after I packed my things and left Ryan's apartment, I was sitting in my office reviewing quarterly reports for the 5 major trials my expanded team was managing. My team had grown to 20 research coordinators and associates, all reporting to me, and we'd successfully enrolled over 3,000 patients across multiple therapeutic areas. The senior director title came with a salary I never imagined making at 32, plus the stock options that were actually worth something now. I'd been on 3 more casual dates in recent months. None turning serious, but all enjoyable experiences with people who respected my career. My calendar showed dinner plans with Camila tomorrow and brunch with my sister next weekend. The kind of regular friendship investment I neglected during my suffocating relationship with Ryan. I looked at my team's success metrics and felt genuinely proud without any voice in my head telling me to be humble or apologize for doing well. Choosing myself over Ryan's pathetic insecurity wasn't selfish like he claimed. It was necessary. Necessary for building the life I actually wanted instead of shrinking into the small, confined space he tried to force me into. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between your ambition and someone else's insecurity? Or seen someone try to tear down your success just because they couldn't handle it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and experiences.